I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now. Stop scrolling. Stop half listening. Put down the phone for a second, then pick it right back up, because I need you to hear every single word I'm about to say. My name is Eleanor. I am 106 years old. I have outlived 2 husbands, 1 stock market crash that nearly wiped us clean, a depression, 3 recessions, and more financial advice columns than I could ever count. And I want to tell you something that I have never said out loud to anyone outside of my own kitchen table. I made mistakes with money. Big ones. Quiet ones. The kind that don't hurt you today. They hurt you 20 years from today, when it's too late to fix them, and all you can do is sit in a chair and wish someone had grabbed you by the shoulders and told you the truth. Well, consider this me grabbing you by the shoulders. I'm going to tell you what 40 years of working, cooking in diners, sewing in factories, cleaning houses that weren't mine, and eventually running a small alteration shop out of my living room, taught me about money that no classroom, no teacher, no guidance counselor ever came close to mentioning. And I'm going to tell you the mistakes I watched good, hard-working people make with their retirement. Mistakes that left some of them eating bread and canned beans in their final years, and mistakes I almost made myself. If this sounds like something you need, and I suspect it does, or you wouldn't still be reading, then do me one small favor before we go any further. Hit that subscribe button. Not for me, I've got enough at my age. But for yourself. Because the people on this channel are going to keep showing up for you, week after week, with the kind of honest conversation about money that your family probably never had around the dinner table. Go on. Subscribe. I'll wait. Now, let's get into it. The year was 1958. And I had just turned 32 years old. I had been working since I was 14, first at my aunt's laundry, then as a seamstress, then picking up shifts at a diner downtown whenever the rent came close to the edge. I knew how to work. Lord, did I know how to work. What I did not know, what nobody had ever sat me down and explained, was the difference between earning money and keeping it. I thought those were the same thing. I thought if I worked hard enough, long enough, the money would just naturally pile up somewhere, like snow in winter, like it would just accumulate on its own, simply because I'd been out there in the cold. That was the first lie I believed about money, and it cost me nearly a decade. I want you to picture my mother, small woman, thick hands from years of garden work and washing dishes. She used to say, "Eleanor, you keep your head down and you work hard and you will never want for anything." And she meant it with everything in her heart. She believed it completely, and so did I, for a very long time. But here is what nobody in my family, nobody in my whole neighborhood honestly understood. Working hard gets you money, but it does not get you wealth. Those are 2 entirely different destinations. And most people spend their whole lives running toward one while thinking they're headed for the other. I watched my neighbor Helen work at the textile mill for 31 years. 31 years, never missed a day, never complained, never asked for a raise that wasn't handed to her first. When she retired at 65, she had her pension, a small one, and a savings account with about $4,000 in it. She had worked her fingers nearly to the bone for over 3 decades, and she retired with $4,000 in savings. That's it. Now, Helen wasn't foolish. She wasn't spending wildly. She was doing exactly what she'd been told to do. Work, spend on what you need, save a little when you can. What nobody told her, what nobody told any of us, was that saving a little when you can is not a retirement strategy. It is hope dressed up as a plan. The first thing 40 years of working taught me is this. You have to be intentional about money in a way that feels almost rude, almost aggressive. You have to treat saving not as the thing you do with what's left over, but as the first bill you pay every single month, before the landlord, before the electric company, before the grocery store. You pay yourself first. I didn't learn that until I was in my 40s. I wish someone had sat me down at 22 and said it plainly. The moment your paycheck comes in, a portion of it disappears into savings. Automatically, invisibly, non-negotiably, before you ever see it, before you can want something with it, before the world can talk you out of it. Because if you wait until the end of the month to save what's left, honey, there is never anything left. The world will see to that. And here is the retirement mistake I see people make all the time, even today when my grandchildren show me things on that little phone screen. They treat their retirement savings like a rainy day fund. They dip into it. They borrow from it. They cash it out when they change jobs and tell themselves they'll put it back later. Later never comes. I had a cousin, sharp man, smart man, could stretch a dollar like taffy, who cashed out his 401k twice before he turned 50. Once when he lost his job. Once when he bought a truck. He paid the penalties, paid the taxes, and told himself he had no choice. By the time he was 68, he had almost nothing. He had to go back to work at a hardware store at 68 years old. Not because he wanted to, but because those 2 decisions had taken years off of his financial life. Touching your retirement savings before retirement is not a financial decision. It is a financial emergency. And if you find yourself in a position where that money is calling your name, the answer is to find another way, any other way, before you ever reach into that account. Because the money you pull out today isn't just the amount you pull out. It's every dollar that money would have grown into over the next 10, 15, 20 years. That's the part nobody tells you when you're standing at the counter deciding whether to cash out. I learned this the slow way. I hope you learn it the fast way, through someone else's story, through mine. The second thing I want you to understand, still in this first chapter of my life's education, is this. Debt is not normal. We were taught to treat debt like weather, something that just happens, something you live with, something you manage. My generation borrowed for houses, for cars, for unexpected medical bills, and we thought of interest payments the way we thought of taxes. Unavoidable, unpleasant, just part of life. But interest is not weather. Interest is a decision. And every month you carry a balance on a credit card. Every month you pay the minimum and roll it forward. You are making a choice to pay your bank before you pay your future self. I'm not saying never borrow. I borrowed for my house and I don't regret it. What I regret is the years I carried small debts, store credit here, a personal loan there, and thought of them as manageable because the monthly payments were small. Small payments on long debts are the most expensive thing most people ever buy. And they buy them quietly, monthly, without ever fully reckoning with the total. Add up everything you owe today. Not just the monthly payment, the full balance, and the total interest you will pay if you make only minimum payments. Write that number down and look at it. Really look at it. Because that number is money you have already spent on your past, and it cannot go to your future at the same time. I know that's uncomfortable. I know it might be a big number, but you need to see it, because you cannot fight something you refuse to look at. Now I want to talk about the retirement mistakes. Not the dramatic ones you read about. Not the people who lost everything in a scam. Not the ones who gambled their savings away. I want to talk about the quiet mistakes. The polite ones. The ones that happen slowly, in ordinary life, made by ordinary people who thought they were doing everything right. The first quiet mistake is waiting. Just waiting. Telling yourself you'll start saving seriously next year when the kids are in school. Next year when the car is paid off. Next year when you get the raise. I cannot tell you how many people I have known, wonderful people, responsible people, who spent 20 years telling themselves they were almost ready to start saving seriously for retirement. When I was in my 50s, I knew a woman from my church, sweet as the day is long, who started her first retirement account at age 54. She was embarrassed about it. She said to me, "Eleanor, I know I should have started sooner, but at least I'm starting." And she was right. Starting late is still better than never starting. But I want you to understand the arithmetic of what waiting costs you, because it is staggering. If you put away $200 a month starting at 25, assuming modest, reasonable growth, you will have more money at 65 than someone who puts away $400 a month starting at 45. More money, doing half the work. That is the power of time in the market. Time is the ingredient that nobody can sell you, and nobody can give back to you once it's gone. Every year you wait to start is not a year lost. It is potentially tens of thousands of dollars lost. Quietly, invisibly, without any drama at all. Start now. Whatever you have, whatever you can spare, $20 a month if that's all you've got. Start now and let time do the heavy lifting that no job, no bonus, no windfall will ever be able to replicate. The second quiet retirement mistake, and this one breaks my heart every time because I nearly made it myself, is building a life that is too expensive to retire from. Let me explain what I mean. In your working years, you build up a certain way of living, a certain house, a certain neighborhood, a certain set of habits and expectations about what life looks like. Vacations, restaurants, newer cars when the old ones still run fine. And there is nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of your labor. Lord knows you've earned it. But so many people build a retirement plan based on assumptions about their spending that don't account for what their life actually costs. They retire and discover, sometimes within the first year, that their savings simply cannot sustain the lifestyle they were living. And so they either return to work or they spend down their principal faster than they ever expected, or they quietly shrink their lives in ways that hurt, in ways that feel like loss, because they hadn't planned honestly for what retirement was going to cost. Be honest with yourself about your spending, not what you wish you spent, not what you spend in a good month. What you actually spend, averaged across a year, including the car repairs and the medical bills and the family obligations and the things that don't fit neatly into any budget category but show up anyway without fail. That number is your real number. And your retirement savings needs to be built around that number, not around an optimistic dream of how disciplined you're going to be once you stop working. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people spend more in early retirement than they did while working because they finally have time to travel, to try things, to do the home projects they put off for years. Early retirement is often the most expensive phase of retirement, not the cheapest. Plan for that. The third quiet mistake, and this one I watched my first husband almost make, is treating Social Security as a plan instead of a supplement. My husband Harold was a good provider. Dependable, steady, not flashy with money. But he had this idea, common in his generation, that Social Security was going to be the backbone of retirement, that it would cover the essentials and savings would just be cushion. Social Security was never meant to be a full retirement income. It was designed to supplement what you had already saved. When people retire with little savings and lean entirely on Social Security, they often find that the check covers the basics, barely, and there is nothing left for the unexpected. And in retirement, the unexpected comes often. Medical expenses that insurance doesn't fully cover, a furnace that breaks in February, a medication that costs more than you budgeted for. Without savings sitting behind that monthly check, every one of those surprises becomes a crisis. If you are still working and counting on Social Security to carry you through retirement, I need you to hear this as clearly as I can say it. Save anyway. Save more than you think you need. Because what feels like enough on paper often turns out to be just enough to be scared every month. and scared is not the way you should spend the years you worked your whole life to reach. And one more thing on Social Security. Wait as long as you possibly can before you claim it. Every year you delay claiming past your full retirement age, your monthly benefit grows. If you claim early, you lock in a reduced benefit for the rest of your life. If you can wait, if you have savings to live on in the meantime, waiting even 2 or 3 extra years can mean hundreds of dollars more every single month for as long as you live. At my age, that adds up to a very significant amount. I'm 106 years old. I have watched the world change so many times that I've stopped being surprised by it. What I have not stopped being surprised by is how consistently the same money mistakes follow each generation, how we keep handing our children the same gaps in understanding and then watching them stumble into the same holes we stumbled into. So I want to close with the things I know now, not theories, not things I read, things I lived. The first thing is this. Your relationship with money is emotional long before it is mathematical. I grew up without much, and for years that meant I either hoarded money out of fear or spent it impulsively when I had it, because some part of me never quite believed it would stay. That's a psychological pattern that runs in families that grew up without financial security, and it took me years to recognize it in myself. If money feels heavy to think about, if you avoid looking at your accounts, avoid thinking about retirement because it makes you anxious, avoid conversations about finances because they make you feel shame or panic, that's not a discipline problem. That's an emotional one. And it needs to be addressed the same way you'd address any other fear. Slowly, honestly, with patience for yourself. Because you cannot make clear financial decisions from a place of anxiety. You'll always be running from something instead of building toward something. The second thing I know now is that the people who retire comfortably are not necessarily the ones who earn the most money. They are, almost without exception, the ones who lived below their means long enough and consistently enough that the gap between what they earned and what they spent had time to grow into something real. Not glamorous, not exciting, just steady, just consistent, just year after year of making the boring, responsible choice when the fun, impulsive one was right there, available and tempting. Wealth is mostly built in private. It doesn't look like anything from the outside. The people driving the newest cars and wearing the newest clothes and renovating their kitchens every decade are not always the ones with the most money. Sometimes they are the ones with the least, spending tomorrow's security to look a certain way today. The people quietly maxing out their retirement accounts and driving the same car for 12 years and saying no to things that don't align with their long-term goals. Those are often the people sitting peacefully at 80, 90, looking back without regret. I want you to be one of those people. The third thing I know is about fear, specifically the fear of investing. I have watched so many people, especially women of my generation, but men too, keep their savings in a regular bank account their whole lives because the stock market felt like gambling, felt risky, felt like something that happened to other people who knew more than they did. And the result, every single time, was savings that barely kept up with inflation. Money that was technically safe and practically shrinking in value every year. I am not telling you to be reckless. I am telling you that doing nothing with your money is also a risk. It's just a slower one that feels safe until the day you need that money to carry you and discover it can't. A simple, diversified, low-cost investment, a broad index fund, a target date retirement fund, is not gambling. It is participating in the growth of the economy over time. It has its bad years. It has its terrifying years when the news is loud and the numbers go red and everything in you says to pull out, to run, to protect what you have. Don't run. The ones who ran in every crisis I lived through, and I lived through many, locked in their losses and missed the recovery. The ones who stayed, who didn't look at the statements, who just kept contributing month after month through the down years, came out the other side with more than they started with. Every time. Not always quickly, but every time. Patience is an investment strategy. It is perhaps the most powerful investment strategy available to an ordinary person, and it costs nothing but the discipline to do nothing when everything is screaming at you to act. And finally, the last thing I want to leave you with, the thing that perhaps matters most of all, is this. Money is not the point. I know that sounds strange coming from someone who just spent all this time talking about saving and investing and retirement accounts. But hear me out. Money is not the point. Security is the point. Freedom is the point. The ability to choose is the point. When you have enough money, not a lot, just enough, thoughtfully saved and carefully grown over time, you have options. You can leave a job that's destroying your health. You can help a child or grandchild when they need it. You can get sick and not panic. You can be generous. You can say no. You can slow down before your body forces you to. That's what money, handled well, actually gives you. Not things, not status, options. And options at any age, but especially in your final decades, are the closest thing to freedom that most of us will ever hold in our hands. I have lived 106 years. I have seen what fear about money does to people. I have seen what security does to people. And I can tell you, with whatever authority a very old woman sitting in a very old chair has to offer, the small, consistent, unglamorous decisions you make with money today are writing the story of who you get to be when you're old. Make good decisions. Be patient with yourself when you don't. Start again. And take care of yourself. I mean it. If this video meant something to you, if you heard something today that changed the way you're thinking about money or retirement, please share it with someone you love, your daughter, your nephew, a friend who's been putting off thinking about this stuff for years. because sometimes we need to hear things from a 106-year-old woman before we're ready to really listen. Subscribe to this channel. I'm serious about that. The people here will keep showing up for you. Let them.